Hello everyone, welcome to WhiskyWars. Today we have a Highland War on the channel. These are both Scotch whiskies from the Highland region in Scotland. We have the Oban Little Bay. This is a non-age stated whisky, bottled at 43%. And we have the Ardnamurchan, which is also a non-age stated whisky, but I think it's bottled at 46.8%. Now, the Oban carries quite a premium with its price because it's got a really good reputation. But the Ardnamurchan's a relatively newcomer on the market, but it's got a lot of hype behind it. Now, if you've seen my episode of the neck pour, where I give my first impressions of this whiskey, you'll know that it wasn't actually the best, and I was really surprised by that. Now, the Oban doesn't mention if it's natural colour or non-chill filtered, so I'm going to assume that it's not. So the colour won't matter too much for a lot of people watching, but it's going to be a sort of a deep gold. The Ardnamurchan is a natural colour and non-chill filtered, and that's going to be a much more of a straw-like colour. So the Oban Little Bay, it says on the back of the bottle, just reading it, that it's been extra aged in small oak casks, which are going to give it just a little bit more flavour, hopefully. Comes across quite sweet on the nose, actually. I'm getting a little bit of I'm picking up a little bit of sherry. Has it been aged in sherry cask? There's no mention of it here. But I'm getting a little bit of sherry coming through on the nose. Lots of caramels and lots of oak and vanilla. I think this is going to appeal to a lot of people. But I'm also getting a lovely salty, crisp sea air coming through on the nose. It just keeps it from being too sweet. It makes it a little bit more balanced. Toffee, and I'm getting some apples through. Toffee apples, really. Toffee apples, a little bit of salty sea air, and vanilla, oak, and caramels, with a little bit of a sherry sweetness coming through, which is surprising. I wasn't expecting that. Okay, on to the Ardnamurchan. Now the Ardnamurchan is half peated, half unpeated, and it's also 60% ex-bourbon, 40% ex-sherry, I believe. Let me know down in the comments if I'm wrong on that, but I think that's the ratios. And that peat is evident on the nose. I wouldn't go as far to say that this is going to be a strong peat. I still feel it's going to be a lighter peat. And of course, think of a Highland peat. It's not going to be an Isla peat, and it's not going to be an Island peat, which stops it from getting too earthy. It's peated, but if you've ever had a Highland style of peat, it is a little bit different. It's not as sweet as I thought, though. That peat is giving it. I think because Ardnamurchan is quite close to Isla, you are getting something a little bit different than maybe a Speyside peat in other locations of the Highland region. And it does give it a little bit of an earthiness to it, like a soily, damp leaves. I'm getting that sort of thing with a touch of tobacco on the back end. But it is not going to be as strong as an Isla peat, nowhere near. A little bit oaky and caramels coming through, with just a little bit of a sherry sweetness as well. It's not. I'm not getting as much sherry as I get on the Little Bay, which is weird. But I'm also getting a little bit more wood spice on the Oban than I do on the Ardnamurchan. Okay. A little bit more toffee as well on the Oban, so if that's more your style. Okay, onto the taste. And quickly, if you haven't clicked the subscribe button down below, please do consider doing so. It really helps the channel out and helps it grow. And if you're liking the video so far, please do consider clicking a like as well. Thank you. Onto the taste. The taste is mirroring the nose quite well. I I just swore I got a little bit of menthol on the taste though, which isn't my favourite note in a whiskey. But a little bit of wood spice, a lot of caramels and toffees. So oaky and toffee. Oaky toffee on the taste with a little bit of vanilla. Quite a good amount of bacon spice, but it does drink quite soft and smooth. Certainly a good amount of cinnamon in this whiskey. Yeah, that is it's an easy sipper, this whiskey. I think it's going to appeal to a lot of people, and it's a relatively safe whiskey. It's not peated, it's a little bit of oak, lots of vanillas and toffees, a little bit of apple, and some cinnamon as well. I'm not getting the sherry notes that I got a little bit of sherry on the nose, but I'm not actually getting it on the taste as much. Okay, on to the Ardnamurchan. It's peated, so it's given me those dry, dirty notes of tobacco leaves and damp as well, which I know might not sound great, but it is quite nice in a whiskey, I find. But there's a sweetness to this whiskey as well. It's not overly salted at all. I think there's a little bit of salt there. Just like the Oban, there's a little bit of salt in these whiskies, but it's not overdone. These still come across more sweet than they do salty. That peat isn't overdone either. It's nice and subtle. It adds something to the whiskey. It takes it in a certain direction for sure, but it's not overbearing. I think if you don't like peat, you still might like this whiskey. It's not overdoing it at all. Strangely, I'm getting a little bit more sherry notes on the taste of the Ardnamurchan than I am on the Oban. Certainly, letting this Ardnamurchan like I was hoping after my episode of the neck pour, giving it a little bit of time to open up and breathe, work a little bit through the whiskey, it's really opening up now, and I'm understanding a lot more of the hype of this whiskey. I have to say, it does not blow me away, this whiskey, and I don't think it deserves the level of hype that it gets, but it is still a good whiskey. And it's decent value as well. I'm thinking a little bit of lemon coming through on the Ardnamurchan now, which blends quite well with that dry tobacco leaf sort of note. A little bit of a floral quality coming through as well, which is interesting because, and that's how you know the peat is done quite lightly, because if you get quite strong peat, it's very hard to pick up floral notes. But you do pick up a little hint of something floral. I think it's a subtle whiskey, but there's complexity to it as well. You've just got to spend some serious time on it. Yeah, going back to the Oban, it does feel a little bit more simple in comparison to the Ardnamurchan. But I think this is going to be a safe whiskey for people. I think both of these are safe whiskies, but I'd say the Oban's going to be more safe. Now, price time. The Ardnamurchan retails for around £50 in the UK, although I have seen it on certain websites for £40. I don't like 50 for this whiskey, but at 40 I do like it. And the Oban Little Bay is also expensive. This is £70 in the UK RRP, which I do not recommend it at that price. I managed to pick this whiskey up for £45 in the UK on a really good offer though, and I also got this one for £35. But normally, if you can pick this one up for £40, I would say the Ardnamurchan is going to be the winner today, but based on price. I think it's quite close, and I can see the Oban appealing to more people, but this is still a relatively safe whiskey. It's lightly peated, there's elements of floral, lemon sweetness, a little bit of sherry. I think it's going to appeal to a lot of people. The Oban, more caramelly, more toffee, apple, a little bit more wood, spice and cinnamon. So take your pick on which you prefer. I do think the Oban's a little bit overpriced. Both good whiskies, but a little bit overpriced. So for me, the winner today is an easy one. It's going to be the Ardnamurchan, which I would have never guessed I'd be picking after my first episode of the Net Pour on this whiskey. So if you buy this whiskey, do give it a couple of weeks to open up before you judge it like I did. Thank you so much for watching the video today. If you like the video, please drop a like on the video and please consider clicking the subscribe button down below. Really helps me out. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you all for the next Whiskey War.